Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another podcast. Welcome, Dr. Ahmad Attila Argi.
Hello, today.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Well, today we're going to talk about undisputed scientific facts in the Qur'an. Now, I'm sure a lot of us have read of different scientific facts in the Qur'an, so I'm not sure if you're going to talk about the ones we know, or some of us may know, or have we got some different ones in mind? And obviously, you're not going to be able to cover everything, right? So, what are you thinking?
Exactly. There's so many scientific facts in the Quran, as you know, and some of them are very common. You probably find, YouTube videos on it. Many of them, things like, the sea does not mixing, the universe expanding, it's a very common things that people know. But I'm going to provide some very original
Right.
things,
Okay. That's not as common.
which are in the Quran. That's not very common. Some of them, most people maybe do not know. So it is going to be very original. I should maybe start with one of them.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Yeah, let's start. Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'll start with Surah Najm. Surah Najm. Najm means star, as you know.
Yeah.
In Surah Najm, the star called Sirius is mentioned as Shira, the star of Shira. And it's mentioned, if you count Bismillahirrahmanirrahim as the first verse, it's mentioned in the 50th verse. 50.
Yes.
And today we know through astronomy that the star series is a binary system. There are two stars there, which are orbiting each other, orbiting a center of mass, we should say. And each orbit they do around each other is 50 years, exactly 50 years. And when you look at the Quran, the term Shira, Sirius, is mentioned in the 50th verse with the Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Yeah.
But there is an interesting thing about Sirius, which I just discovered recently, and I was really shocked with that.
Interesting.
The star Sirius, in astronomy, people can maybe refer to it and check it. It is at a distance of 8.61 light years from Earth.
Right.
So 8.61 light years from Earth. And when you look at Surah At-Tariq, it begins with At-Tariq wa ma adraka ma At-Tariq, Najm as-Saqib, meaning that, do you know what Tariq is? It's a very bright, piercing star. That's what the Quran says. And we know that Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky. And here's the interesting thing. The term Tariq appears in the Quran 86th surah, chapter, and the first verse. So it's 861. And the distance of it is again 8.61. Nobody can come up and say this is just a coincidence. It's a very interesting thing.
So just for the Tariq mentioned is the 86, and you're suggesting Tariq is that Sirius star.
Sirius subsequent says it's piercingly bright. It is the brightest.
It is the brightest
star in the sky. And like I said, it's 86 at Tariq. Surah Tariq is 86 chapter and first verse. So 861.
Right.
And the distance is 8.61 as well. It's amazing when you think about it. Since we are remaining with astronomical things or astrophysics, we should say physics as well.
Yes.
Maybe people can have a look at Surah Hadid as well.
Okay.
As you know, Hadid is iron. It means iron. And the term Hadid in the Quran, in that surah, in that chapter, first appears, the steel itself, the iron itself, first appears in the 26th verse, counting Bismillah again. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, 26th verse. As you know, in the periodic table, the number of iron is 26 again.
I don't remember my elementary table, but that is fascinating.
It is the 26 again. You cannot just avoid or ignore these realities, just say it's coincidences and things like that. And there are so many things like we talked about before too, in regards to, for example, if you do a little research on how many times the term male appears in the Quran, it appears 23 times. And female appears 23 times as well. 23, 23, 46.
46 chromosomes, huh?
46 chromosomes. And how was the noble Prophet ﷺ supposed to know that we have chromosomes? People did not even know about chromosomes then. But the Quran says we have 46 chromosomes. 23 comes from the 23 XY.
It just shows that knowledge is coming from, as you said, a higher power, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has knowledge of everything of all times. Because if you're, and again, the Quran was revealed over 23 years, you can't keep track of, it was written, female was mentioned 3 times, this was mentioned, male 10 times, I've got to mention it this many more times. It's just beyond, and it's not just one. Like you talked about
so many things.
You talked about, the star, the distance. There's so many. It really shows it's got to be someone which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that, zoomed out view of everything and knowledge of everything.
Yeah. It is quite fascinating because I remember some Orientalists arguing that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, wrote the Quran himself. As you know, there's a verse in the Quran which says he didn't know how to read or write. He was unlettered. He was ummi. The Quran says it itself. But moreover, historically, when we look at the history, the people who lived at the time, even the non-believers, people who were the enemies of the Prophet, they actually had hostility against the Prophet. They also confirmed that he did not know how to write and read.
Right. That would have been one of the first things they would have said.
They would have used
him, but they didn't even accuse him of that.
Yeah, they knew he was, unlettered. But he is another miraculous thing that proves that he was unlettered, or something that he could not have known. It was an impossibility. And there is, most people know that the term month, appears in the Quran 12 times. And the term day, yawm, appears 365 times in the Quran. But here's the thing, at the time, Arabs, they used the lunar calendar, moon calendar,
Not the Gregorian calendar.
Yes, if the Prophet, were to write the Quran himself and wanted to put something miraculous in there intentionally, he was a very smart man, let us say, he would have put 354 times the day, not 365.
The lunar year.
Yeah, he would have put the lunar year, not the solar year. I don't believe he even knew that, those terms appeared there 365 times. It is divine message.
The messenger. He's the means through which it was
It's conveying it, isn't it?
I guess that really highlights again that the Quran, like for those, it's timeless in that there will be messages for people of that time, and then there's messages in it for people of future time. There's people who follow the Gregorian calendar, those lunar. So it's basically, and there's probably so much in there that we don't know yet. That we haven't been able to unravel, because it's a treasure that you have to constantly unravel and find.
In fact, the Quran itself says, it is Allah who created the sun and the moon so that you can make calculations. The Quran says this anyway. So the Quran is encouraging us to actually study, make calculation, increase our knowledge, because like you said, the Quran was not revealed just for the people of, 14 centuries ago. It's revealed for us as well. It's there for till eternity, until, Qiyamah. It'll be valid. Who knows, 100 years later, what they will discover from the Quran. And we keep on discovering things, and things that, as I said, undisputed scientific facts. Who can dispute the fact that, the Einstein's theory of special relativity, the principle there is this. If you travel at the speed of light, time stops. meaning that there's a thing called time dilation. The faster you travel, the slower the time gets. For the observer, the time passes the same, but for the traveler himself or herself, time slows down. Now, we have already proven this now. It's been proven scientifically. Even if you look at the space station ISS, there are clocks on that station, and they measure that the clocks run slower there. It is thousands of seconds, one for a second, but still they know it's documented. The faster you go, slower the time goes. It's different for the observer. It's different for the person who's experienced
actually traveling it. Yeah.
Even we know that if someone is sitting, the other person is walking around.
Yeah.
Time goes slower for the person who is walking around.
How interesting.
Faster for the person who's sitting. Time is relevant. It's very interesting.
Very interesting.
But Einstein proposed this, in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
I think it was 1905 or 1915, around there, 1915, I think. Special relativity theory. But if you open the Qur'an and you look at Surah Ma'arij, chapter Ma'arij 4, the Qur'an very clearly says, you don't need interpretation to you look at the meaning directly. It says, the Spirit and the angels ascend to him in a day which is 50,000 years of your time.
Relativity.
That is special relativity. The angels are traveling extremely fast, and time slows for them. So for them, only a day passes, but for us, 50,000 years passes. This is special relativity. It's there. Very clear. The Quran mentions it. So there are so many scientific facts in the Quran. But as I said at the beginning, this is a new thing that I discovered, and I found it very interesting.
8.61 or 86.1?
Yeah. 8.61 is the distance and the verse is first verse of the 86.
But those Surah. You got 861 order of those.
For both of them, there's 861 there.
That is big.
And I found that very amazing. But there are so many things, like you said, in the Quran. That we can use as facts, whether they are scientific facts, or other facts too.
And it just shows how there's two things that come to my mind from this. One, the Quran talks to everyone. Like we just said, how it talks to someone who follows Gregorian calendar, someone who follows lunar calendar, and that's just, we've noticed it, but it speaks to everyone. It speaks to different genders, and like males and females differently. It speaks to different professions, like a scientist differently, to a chemist and so forth. It's like everyone gets something out of it based on who they are and probably how open they are to the Quran.
It's like a huge, let us say, the analogy, it's going to be a huge, fruit garden. People enter in there, and depending on their ability, their height, they can pick fruits from the top of the tree or the lower parts of the tree. But everyone benefits from it somehow. Everyone benefits. And perhaps, as I said, maybe 200-300 years later, if the world is still around, people will open the Quran. They have discovered something else scientifically, and they will say, "Oh, it was already mentioned in the Quran."
Yes.
And I'm sure these things will happen because there are very interesting things in the Quran. If people, analyzed, for example, the stories of Sulaiman alayhi salam, where he travels through air, he goes to thousands of kilometers within the same day and comes back. There is actually teleportation. In the Quran, he brings the throne of Belkis, the queen of Sheba, from a distance of 2,000 kilometers with a blink of an eye. So there is teleportation there. You're taking matter, physical matter, the distance within seconds.
Matter of time, huh?
Yeah. So these are all indications, perhaps, that in the future we will develop these technologies as well, because the Quran mentions them.
And I just, maybe we'll wrap it up around here, but I just feel like that, it's so important to have these conversations in today's time when science and religion are shown to be rivals, whereas the more we're talking, and I'm sure, this is a strong conviction you have, we see that how much they work together and how much synergy there is and how much knowing science actually strengthens faith and helps us to connect to the Qur'an more and connect to Allah more.
That's very interesting because, yes, there is a theme like that, you should show science and religion should stay away from each other. How could they? It is God who created science. It is God who created the universe.
I like that.
They are directly connected. How could you separate them? Moreover, if you look at, the history of Islam, the Quran encouraged people to be engaged with scientific research right from the beginning, straight away, like prayer times. They had to figure out the prayer times. Then they needed to have knowledge about astronomy.
That's right.
The fasting, you need to have
praying
knowledge
times,
about astronomy.
Astronomy, because you need to know when it's sunrise, sunset, when it's its peak. This requires astronomical knowledge.
Yes, straight away there's an encouragement there. And the Quran keeps on saying throughout the Quran verses, do they not think? Do they not ponder? Do they not look upon the skies? The trees, the galaxies, the stars, the moon, everything is encouraging us to think scientifically. This is God's creation. As I repeat all the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send just one book, the Quran. Yes, there are revelations before it too, but Quran is a book of revelation. But there is the book of creation as well. It's the universe. Some people who say, why are you talking about scientific matters? I say to them, who authored the universe? Allah is the author of the Quran. It's His kalam, it's revelation, His word. But who authored the universe? Did someone else create it? So when you study the Quran and the universe, you're studying, Allah, His religion. You're studying His names, attributes. Yes. That's what it is. So
we should really study the universe as much as we study the Quran and actually bring them together, which is what we're trying to do through
exactly. There should be a balance there,
Yeah. And
the Quran is the interpreter of the universe anyway.
And the universe is it works in different ways. It could be a sample or an explanation or it gives meaning to the Quran and sometimes vice versa. Yes. Very true.
Yes.
Well, let's see what podcast topic we're going to have next time. We'll see. You'll have to wait and see for the next one, but that was a very interesting and very enlightening podcast.
We are trying to come up with very original things.
We are. So, things that you haven't heard anywhere else. Or so we'll keep you posted and we'll see you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.